The rain hammered against the wooden door like bullets, and when Vivienne Edwards collapsed against it, drenched to the bone and shaking so violently her teeth rattled, she knew she had reached the absolute end of everything she had ever known. Owen Bradley had just settled into his chair with a cup of coffee when the pounding started, faint at first beneath the roar of the storm, then insistent. He set down his cup and crossed the small ranch house in 3 long strides, pulling open the door to find a woman crumpled on his porch, her dress plastered to her skin, her dark hair hanging in ropes around a face so pale it looked ghostly in the lightning flashes. She looked up at him with eyes that held more than just fear. They held the kind of desperation that comes from having nowhere left to turn. "Please," she whispered, and the word was nearly lost in the thunder that rolled across the Nevada sky. Owen did not hesitate. He bent down and lifted her into his arms, carrying her inside and kicking the door shut behind them. The storm continued its assault on the little ranch house 5 miles outside Owyhee, but inside, the warmth from the fireplace began to chase away some of the cold that had settled deep into Vivienne's bones. "Can you stand?" Owen asked, setting her gently on her feet near the fire. She nodded, though her legs trembled beneath her. Her fingers were white and wrinkled from the rain, and when she tried to speak again, her voice came out as barely more than a rasp. "I did not know where else to go." Owen looked at her properly then. She was younger than he had first thought, maybe 22 or 23, with fine features that spoke of a gentler life than the one that had apparently brought her to his door in the middle of a spring storm in 1878. Her dress, though ruined by rain and mud, had once been a decent traveling outfit. Whatever had happened to her, she had not started out as someone accustomed to hardship. "Let me get you something dry," he said, moving toward the small bedroom at the back of the house. He returned with one of his shirts and a pair of trousers that would be far too large for her, along with a blanket. "You can change behind that screen there. I will make some coffee." Vivienne took the clothes with shaking hands. "Thank you," she managed. While she changed, Owen busied himself with the coffee pot, though his mind raced with questions. It was not common for a woman to appear alone at a ranch this far from town, especially not in weather like this. Owyhee was a small mining community, rough around the edges, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else's business. He had moved here 3 years ago, buying this small ranch with money he had saved from years of working cattle drives from Texas up to Montana. At 27, he had wanted something of his own, a place where he could build a life that did not involve sleeping on the ground and eating dust for months at a time. When Vivienne emerged from behind the screen, she looked almost childlike in his oversized clothes, the shirt hanging to her knees, the trousers rolled up several times at the ankles. She had wrapped the blanket around her shoulders and was holding it closed with both hands. Her hair was still wet, but she had wrung out the worst of the water. "Sit down before you fall down," Owen said, gesturing to the chair by the fire. He poured coffee into a tin cup and handed it to her. "Drink this slowly." She obeyed, sinking into the chair with a grateful sigh. The warmth of the cup seemed to help, and after a few sips of the strong, hot coffee, some color began to return to her cheeks. Owen pulled another chair close and sat down, studying her with dark blue eyes that missed very little. "You want to tell me what brought you out here?" he asked, his voice gentle but firm. Vivienne stared into the cup for a long moment. "I was on the stage from Virginia City. We were supposed to reach Owyhee by afternoon, but one of the wheels broke about 10 miles back. The driver said we would have to wait for another stage to come through, but then the storm hit." She paused, taking another sip of coffee. "There were 4 of us. The driver, another man, a woman with her daughter, and me." When it started getting really bad, the driver suggested we try to make it to a way station he knew about, but we got separated in the rain. I just kept walking, hoping to find shelter. That way station is abandoned, Owen said. Has been for over a year. The driver should have known that. He was new, Vivienne said softly. I heard him telling the other man it was his second run on this route. Owen shook his head. Inexperience could get people killed out here, especially in weather like this. The others might have found shelter somewhere else. When this storm passes, I will ride out and look for them. Thank you. Vivienne looked at him properly for the first time, taking in the strong lines of his face, the way his dark hair curled slightly at the collar of his shirt, the capable hands that held his own coffee cup with an ease that spoke of a man comfortable with himself and his life. I am sorry for the intrusion. No intrusion, Owen said. Out here we help each other. That is just how it is. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the storm rage outside. Lightning split the sky, briefly illuminating the room in stark white light, followed by thunder that seemed to shake the very foundations of the house. Vivienne flinched at each crack, and Owen noticed the way her hands tightened on the cup. You are safe here, he said quietly. This house has weathered worse storms than this. Where are we exactly? She asked. About 5 miles northeast of Awahi. My ranch is small, just me and about 50 head of cattle, some horses. I do some work in town when I need extra money, but mostly I keep to myself out here. You live alone? I do. Owen finished his coffee and stood to refill both their cups. Gets lonely sometimes, but I like the peace. Spent enough years surrounded by dozens of men on cattle drives. This suits me better now. Vivienne accepted the fresh coffee gratefully. I was going to Awahi to take a position as a schoolteacher. They wrote to me in Virginia City after the previous teacher married and moved away. We need a teacher, Owen said. The children have been without proper schooling for 3 months now. Some of the mothers have been trying to teach them, but it is not the same. I hope my thing survived, Vivienne said, a note of worry creeping into her voice. All my books and teaching materials were in my trunk on the stage. We will find out when the storm passes, Owen assured her. For tonight you should rest. You can take the bed. I will sleep out here by the fire. I cannot take your bed, Vivienne protested. You can and you will, Owen said, his tone leaving no room for argument. You have been through an ordeal. You need proper rest. Vivienne wanted to argue further, but exhaustion was pulling at her like a heavy weight. The warmth, the coffee, and the relief of being somewhere safe after the terror of being lost in the storm had drained away what little energy she had left. Thank you, she said again, the words feeling inadequate for the kindness this stranger was showing her. Owen showed her to the small bedroom, which was sparse but clean. A sturdy bed covered with quilts dominated the space, and a simple washstand stood in the corner. I will be right outside if you need anything, he said. After he closed the door, Vivienne stood for a moment in the center of the room, trying to process everything that had happened in the past few hours. This morning she had been full of excitement and nervousness about her new position, her new life in a new town. Now she was wearing a stranger's clothes in a stranger's house, and she had no idea where her belongings were or even if the other passengers from the stage were safe. She climbed into the bed, pulling the quilts up to her chin. The sheets smelled like soap and sunshine, and despite everything, she felt herself beginning to relax. Outside, the storm continued, but in here, she was warm and dry and safe. As she drifted off to sleep, her last conscious thought was of the cowboy with the kind eyes who had opened his door to her without hesitation. Owen sat by the fire for a long time after Vivienne had gone to bed, listening to the storm and thinking. He had not expected his evening to take this turn, but he found himself oddly glad for the company, even under these circumstances. There was something about the woman that intrigued him beyond just the mystery of her arrival. Maybe it was the quiet dignity she maintained even in her distress, or the intelligence he saw in her eyes. Whatever it was, he found himself hoping that she and the other passengers would all be found safe when morning came. The storm finally began to ease around midnight, the thunder moving off into the distance and the rain settling into a steady patter. Owen made up a bed for himself on the floor near the fireplace, using some spare blankets and his saddle as a pillow. It was not the most comfortable arrangement, but he had slept in far worse conditions during his years on the trail. Morning came gray and cool, the sun hidden behind lingering clouds. Owen woke early, as was his habit, and moved quietly around the small house, stoking the fire and putting coffee on to boil. He was frying bacon when Vivienne emerged from the bedroom, still wearing his clothes, her hair hanging loose around her shoulders. "Good morning," she said, her voice still carrying a hint of the exhaustion from the night before. "Morning," Owen replied. "How did you sleep?" "Better than I expected, considering everything." She moved closer to the fire, drawn by its warmth. "What time is it?" "A little past 6. I was going to let you sleep longer, but I need to ride out and check on things, maybe see if I can find any trace of that stage or the other passengers." "I want to come with you," Vivienne said immediately. Owen turned to look at her, considering. "It will be rough going. The ground will be muddy, and we do not know what we might find. Those people were my traveling companions. If they are hurt or in trouble, I want to help." Her chin lifted slightly, and Owen saw the determination in her eyes. He nodded slowly. "All right. But you will need better clothes than those. I think I have some things that might work. They belonged to my younger brother before he headed back east. He was smaller than me." After breakfast, Owen produced a set of clothes that fit Vivienne much better, though they were still obviously men's attire. She did not care. The practical nature of the pants and shirt would serve her much better than a dress for riding. Owen saddled 2 horses, a sturdy bay for himself and a gentler mare for Vivienne. "You know how to ride?" he asked as he helped her mount. "I grew up on a farm in Missouri," she said, settling into the saddle with an ease that answered his question. "I have been riding since I was a child." They rode out into a world transformed by the storm. Small streams had appeared where none existed before, cutting through the landscape in wandering paths. The sagebrush looked beaten down, and the sky remained overcast, though the rain had stopped. Owen led the way, retracing what he thought would have been the most likely path from where Vivienne had said the stage broke down. They had been riding for about an hour when they spotted smoke rising in the distance. Owen urged his horse faster, Vivienne keeping pace beside him. As they drew closer, they saw the remains of a small fire and 3 figures huddled around it beneath a makeshift shelter constructed from stage-coach cushions and a torn piece of canvas. The driver, a grizzled man in his 40s, looked up as they approached, relief washing over his weathered face. "Thank God," he said, struggling to his feet. "We thought we were going to have to try walking to town." The other passengers, a woman named Margaret Harrison and her 10-year-old daughter Clara, looked equally relieved to see help arriving. The other male passenger, it turned out, had decided to try making it to Awahi on his own during the night and had not returned. "Fool decision," the driver muttered. "I told him to wait for morning, but he would not listen." Owen quickly assessed the situation. "We need to get you all somewhere warm. My ranch is closer than town. Can you ride?" The driver nodded, but Margaret looked uncertain. "I have never been very good with horses," she admitted. "You and your daughter can ride with me," Owen said. "It will be slower, but we will manage." It took some maneuvering, but they eventually got everyone mounted. Owen rode with Clara in front of him and Margaret behind, while the driver took Vivienne's horse and Vivienne rode with the driver, though she insisted she could have ridden alone. The journey back to the ranch took twice as long as the ride out, but they made it without incident. Back at the house, Owen got everyone settled while Vivienne helped Margaret and Clara into dry clothes. The ranch house felt crowded with 5 people in it, but there was something comforting about the bustle of activity. Owen made a large pot of stew while Vivienne brewed more coffee, and the driver, who introduced himself as Tom Sawyer, no relation to the famous character he was quick to add, told them the full story of what had happened. "That wheel just gave out," Tom said, shaking his head. "Should have been replaced before we left Virginia City, but the company is always trying to save money. Then when the storm hit, everything went wrong at once. The man who left last night, his name was Robert Fletcher, businessman from California. He kept saying he had important meetings in Awahi and could not afford to wait. I will ride into town this afternoon and organize a search party," Owen said. "With any luck, he made it to town on his own, but if not, we need to find him before nightfall." "I am so grateful to you," Margaret said, clutching her daughter close. "When we got separated from Vivienne, I feared the worst, but then Tom found us and we managed to make that shelter. Still, we were so cold and wet." "Out here, you do what you have to do," Owen said simply. "Everyone is safe now. That is what matters." After they had all eaten and warmed up, Owen prepared to ride into Awahi. Vivienne walked out to the barn with him while he saddled his horse. "You have been very kind," she said. "I do not know how to thank you." Owen tightened the cinch on his saddle and turned to face her. "No thanks needed. Like I said last night, this is just how we do things out here. Still, I want you to know it means something." She paused, then added, "When you opened your door last night, I thought I was going to die out there in that storm. I had never been so scared in my life." "You are tougher than you think," Owen said, studying her face in the dim light of the barn. "Not many people could have made it as far as you did in that weather. I just kept walking because I did not know what else to do. Sometimes that is all you can do. Keep moving forward." He swung up into the saddle. "I should be back by evening. Make yourself at home. There is plenty of food, and if anyone needs anything, just help yourself." Vivienne watched him ride away, then returned to the house. Margaret and Clara were resting in the bedroom, so Vivienne set about tidying up and preparing more food for when Owen returned. She found herself thinking about the cowboy who had taken them all in without question, who had ridden out into the muddy aftermath of a storm to look for strangers, who spoke with such quiet confidence about the way things should be done. She was washing dishes when she realized she was smiling. Despite the ordeal of the past 24 hours, despite the uncertainty about her position in Awahi and her lost belongings, she felt oddly content in this moment. There was something about this place, this simple ranch house with its solid walls and warm fire, that felt more like home than anywhere she had been in a long time. Owen returned as the sun was setting, bringing with him news that Robert Fletcher had indeed made it to Awahi, though he had nearly collapsed from exhaustion when he arrived. The man was recovering at the town's only hotel. Owen had also arranged for a wagon to be sent out the next day to retrieve what remained of the broken stagecoach and any salvageable luggage. "They found your trunk," he told Vivienne. "It got thrown clear when the wheel broke, so it stayed fairly dry. Should be here by tomorrow afternoon." Relief flooded through Vivienne. "Thank you for checking. I also spoke to the town council about your teaching position. They are eager to meet you, but they understand you need a day or two to recover from your journey." He paused, then added, "They asked if I would bring you into town when you are ready." "I would appreciate that," Vivienne said. Over the next 2 days, the ranch house bustled with activity. Margaret and Clara proved to be delightful company, with Clara asking endless questions about ranch life, and Margaret helping with cooking and cleaning despite Owen's protests that they were guests. Tom the driver spent most of his time in the barn, helping Owen with various chores and repairs that needed doing. Vivienne found herself falling into an easy rhythm with Owen. They would rise early, work together to prepare breakfast for everyone, then go about their separate tasks during the day. In the evenings, they would all gather around the fire, telling stories and sharing pieces of their lives. She learned that Owen had grown up in Texas, the oldest of 4 children. His father had been a rancher who lost everything in the economic panic of 1873, forcing Owen to leave home and find work wherever he could. He had spent years moving from one cattle drive to another, saving every penny he could, until he finally had enough to buy this small ranch in Nevada. "Why Nevada?" Vivienne asked one evening when it was just the two of them sitting by the fire. Margaret and Clara had gone to bed early, and Tom was sleeping in the barn, preferring the solitude. "I liked the emptiness of it," Owen said, staring into the flames. "After years of being surrounded by people, constantly moving, I wanted space. Wanted to be able to stand on my own land and not see another soul for miles if I chose." "Does it ever get lonely?" "Sometimes," he admitted. "But I always figured that was better than being surrounded by people and still feeling alone. At least here, the loneliness is honest." Vivienne understood what he meant. She had felt that kind of loneliness in Virginia City, living in a boarding house full of people who never really saw her, working as a shop girl while she studied at night to earn her teaching certificate. The position in Awahi had seemed like an escape, a chance to do something meaningful with her life. "What about you?" Owen asked. "What made you want to be a teacher?" "My mother was a teacher before she married my father," Vivienne said. "She taught me to read when I was 3 years old, and from then on, books were my whole world. Even after she died when I was 12, I kept reading, kept learning. It seemed natural to want to share that with others." "Your father," he remarried 2 years after my mother died. "My stepmother was not unkind, but she made it clear that she had her own children to worry about. I left as soon as I was 18, went to Virginia City to work and put myself through the teaching program." She looked down at her hands. "I have not been back to Missouri since." "That takes courage," Owen said quietly. "Leaving everything you know to build a new life." "Or desperation," Vivienne replied with a slight smile. "Maybe courage and desperation are not so different sometimes." On the 3rd day, the wagon arrived from Awahi with Vivienne's trunk and the remnants of the other passengers' belongings. It also brought a message that the stage company would be sending a proper coach the following morning to take everyone into town. Margaret and Clara would continue on to Carson City, where Margaret's sister lived, while Tom would report back to the company office. That evening, as they sat around the fire for what would be their last night altogether, there was a bittersweet quality to the gathering. Clara, who had become quite attached to the ranch and its animals, cried a little at the thought of leaving. "Can we come back and visit?" she asked Owen, her young face earnest. "You are welcome any time," Owen said, and meant it. Later, after everyone else had gone to bed, Vivienne helped Owen clean up from dinner. They worked in comfortable silence, and when the last dish was dried and put away, Vivienne found herself reluctant to say goodnight. "I leave tomorrow too," she said. "I should settle into Awahi, meet with the town council, see the schoolhouse." "It is a good little town," Owen said. "Rough around the edges like most mining communities, but the people are decent. You will do well there." "Will I see you?" The question came out before Vivienne could stop it, and she felt heat rise to her cheeks. "I mean, do you come into town often?" Owen smiled, a slow, warm expression that transformed his usually serious face. "I come in for supplies every couple of weeks, and I imagine I will find more reasons to visit once the school is up and running." "I would like that," Vivienne said softly. They stood there in the firelight, and something passed between them, an acknowledgement of the connection that had been growing over these few short days. Owen reached out and gently touched her hand. "When you knocked on my door that night, I never expected this," he said. "Expected what?" "To meet someone who made me question whether I really wanted to live alone out here." Vivienne's breath caught. "Owen." "I know it is too soon to say such things," he continued. "We barely know each other, but I would be lying if I said I was not going to miss having you here." "I will miss being here," Vivienne admitted. "These past few days, despite how they started, have been some of the happiest I can remember. There is something about this place, about you, that feels right." Owen squeezed her hand gently, then released it. "You should get some rest. Tomorrow will be a long day." Vivienne nodded, though she did not want to leave. "Good night, Owen." "Good night, Vivienne." The stage arrived mid-morning, a sturdy vehicle with a driver who looked far more experienced than poor Tom. The goodbyes were emotional, with Clara hugging everyone multiple times and Margaret pressing Owen's hands and thanking him profusely. Tom shook Owen's hand firmly and promised to send word if he ever needed anything. Then it was Vivienne's turn. She stood facing Owen in the morning sunlight, trying to find words for everything she was feeling. "Thank you," she finally said. "For everything. For opening your door, for taking us all in, for being so kind." "This is your home now," Owen said, and it took Vivienne a moment to realize he meant Awahi, not just his ranch. But there was something in his eyes that suggested he might have meant both. "Whenever you need anything, you know where to find me." "I do," she said, and on impulse, she stood on her toes and kissed his cheek. "I will see you soon." She climbed into the stage before she could change her mind, settling next to Margaret while Clara pressed her face to the window to wave goodbye to Owen. As the stage pulled away, Vivienne looked back to see him standing in front of his house, one hand raised in farewell, looking somehow lonely again in the vast landscape. Awahi proved to be exactly as Owen had described it, rough but decent. The town consisted of a single main street with false-fronted buildings on either side, a combination of saloons, general stores, a hotel, a livery stable, and various other businesses that served the mining community. The population was perhaps 200 people, not counting the miners who lived in camps scattered throughout the surrounding hills. The schoolhouse sat at the edge of town, a simple one-room structure that had seen better days. When Vivienne first walked through the door, accompanied by Mrs. Sarah Fletcher, no relation to Robert Fletcher, she assured Vivienne, the head of the town council's education committee, she saw peeling paint, dusty floors, and windows that needed washing. But she also saw potential. "I know it needs work," Mrs. Fletcher said apologetically. "We have been without a teacher for so long that it fell into disrepair." "It will be fine," Vivienne said, already mentally cataloging what needed to be done. "With some cleaning and a few repairs, it will be perfect." Her living quarters were attached to the schoolhouse, a tiny room with a bed, a small stove, a table, and a chair. It was Spartan compared to Owen's ranch house, but it was hers, and Vivienne felt a surge of pride as she unpacked her trunk and arranged her few belongings. The town council formally hired her that afternoon at a meeting in the hotel's small dining room. The salary was modest but fair, and they agreed to provide funds for basic school supplies. Vivienne would begin teaching in 1 week, giving her time to prepare the schoolhouse and familiarize herself with the town. Over the next few days, Vivienne threw herself into the work. She scrubbed floors and washed windows until her hands were raw. She organized the few books that had been left behind by the previous teacher and made lists of additional supplies she would need. Several townspeople stopped by to introduce themselves and offer help, and Vivienne found herself warming to the community. But despite the activity and the anticipation of starting her new position, she found her thoughts constantly drifting back to the ranch, to the quiet cowboy who had opened his door to her in a storm. She wondered what he was doing, whether he thought of her, whether he truly would visit as he had implied. She got her answer on the 6th day, when she looked up from sweeping the schoolhouse steps to see Owen riding down the main street on his bay horse. Her heart leaped in her chest, and she had to resist the urge to drop her broom and run to meet him. Owen dismounted in front of the schoolhouse, tying his horse to the rail. He looked the same as she remembered, tall and solid in his worn jeans and faded shirt, his hat pulled low against the afternoon sun. "Hello," he said, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Hello yourself," Vivienne replied, trying to sound casual despite the way her pulse was racing. "What brings you to town? Needed supplies," Owen said, gesturing vaguely in the direction of the general store. Then, more honestly, wanted to see how you were settling in. "Come see," Vivienne said, leading him into the schoolhouse. Owen looked around the cleaned and organized space with approval. "You have done a lot in less than a week." "I like to keep busy." Vivienne set her broom aside. "I start teaching on Monday. I am nervous and excited all at once." "You will be wonderful," Owen said with such certainty that Vivienne felt her cheeks warm. "Will you stay for dinner?" she asked. "I was going to make something simple, but I would enjoy the company." "I would like that," Owen said. They walked to the small general store together, where Vivienne purchased supplies for dinner while Owen bought what he needed for the ranch. Several townspeople greeted them, and Vivienne noticed the speculative looks that followed them. In a small town like Awahi, any interaction between a single man and a single woman was bound to generate interest. Back at her quarters, Vivienne cooked a simple meal of fried potatoes, beans, and cornbread while Owen sat at her small table and told her about the ranch. One of his cows had given birth to twin calves, a rare occurrence. He had been working on repairing a section of fence that had been damaged in the storm. "It sounds like a good life," Vivienne said as they ate. "It is," Owen agreed. "But it has been better these past few days, knowing you were nearby." Vivienne set down her fork, her heart pounding. "Owen, I know I should not say such things," he said, looking directly at her with those steady blue eyes. "You have just started a new job, a new life here. The last thing you need is a cowboy complicating matters." "You are not complicating anything," Vivienne said softly. "If anything, you are the best thing about being here." The words hung in the air between them, honest and vulnerable. Owen reached across the small table and took her hand. "I have been thinking about you constantly," he admitted. "Ever since that first night when you knocked on my door, half drowned and scared but still somehow strong, I have not been able to get you out of my mind." "I feel the same way," Vivienne confessed. "I know it is fast. I know we have only known each other a week, but there is something here, Owen, something real." "I know," he said. "I feel it too." They sat there for a long moment, hands clasped across the table, acknowledging what was growing between them. Then Owen stood and pulled Vivienne to her feet, drawing her close. When he kissed her, it was gentle but certain, a promise of more to come. "I should go," he said eventually, though he made no move to release her. "It is a long ride back and it will be dark soon. When will I see you again?" Vivienne asked. "I will come back next week," Owen promised, "and the week after that and the week after that for as long as you will have me." "That might be a very long time," Vivienne said with a smile. "I am counting on it," Owen replied. True to his word, Owen visited Awahi every week. Sometimes he would arrive on Saturday afternoon and stay through Sunday, sleeping in the hotel and spending every moment he could with Vivienne. Other times he would come midweek, timing his visits to when Vivienne finished teaching for the day. The townspeople quickly accepted their courtship, though Mrs. Fletcher did take Vivienne aside once to remind her that, as the schoolteacher, she needed to maintain a certain level of propriety. Vivienne assured her that she understood, though privately she chafed at the restrictions. She wanted nothing more than to spend every moment with Owen, to learn everything about him, to build the life she could see taking shape between them. The school thrived under Vivienne's care. She had 14 students ranging in age from 6 to 13, children of miners and shopkeepers and ranchers. She taught them reading and writing and arithmetic, but she also taught them about the wider world through the books she had brought from Virginia City. She organized spelling bees and recitations, and slowly, the little schoolhouse became a center of community life in Awahi. Owen became a familiar figure in town, and several times Vivienne saw him talking with some of her older male students about ranch work and cattle. He had a natural way with people, patient and encouraging, and Vivienne loved watching him interact with the children. As summer gave way to fall, their relationship deepened. They talked about everything, their pasts, their dreams, their fears. Owen told her about the loneliness of his early years on cattle drives, about the father he had disappointed by leaving home. Vivienne shared her own pain, the loss of her mother, the feeling of never quite belonging anywhere. "You belong here," Owen told her one evening as they walked along the edge of town, watching the sun set over the desert landscape. "With me, with this community. You have found your place, Vivienne." "I think I have," she agreed, leaning into his side. "Though I never expected it to happen like this." "Neither did I," Owen admitted. "When you knocked on my door that night, if someone had told me I would be standing here 6 months later, completely in love with you, I would have laughed." Vivienne stopped walking and turned to face him. "You love me." "I do," Owen said simply. "I have loved you since the moment you looked up at me with those terrified eyes and asked for help. I loved your courage, your strength, your kindness. And every day since then, I have fallen more in love with who you are." Tears filled Vivienne's eyes. "I love you too, Owen, so much it scares me sometimes." He pulled her close, holding her as the last light faded from the sky. "Do not be scared. I am not going anywhere, promise. I promise." Owen proposed on a cold November evening, producing a simple gold band that had belonged to his grandmother. They were sitting by the fire in Vivienne's small quarters, reading companionably, when he suddenly set down his book and dropped to one knee. "Vivienne Edwards," he said, his voice serious but his eyes warm, "will you marry me?" Vivienne's hands flew to her mouth. "Owen, I know this place is small," he continued. "I know I do not have much to offer beyond a modest ranch and a heart that is completely yours. But I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep with you every night. I want to build a life with you, a family. Say yes, Vivienne. Please say yes." "Yes," Vivienne said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, of course, yes." Owen slipped the ring onto her finger and swept her into his arms, spinning her around the small room. When he finally set her down, they were both laughing, dizzy with joy and the enormity of what they had just promised each other. They were married 3 weeks later in a simple ceremony at the church in Awahi. Mrs. Fletcher stood up with Vivienne, and Tom Sawyer, who had become a regular visitor to the area on his stage runs, stood up with Owen. The entire town turned out for the wedding, cramming into the small church to witness the marriage of their schoolteacher, and the rancher who had won her heart. Vivienne wore a simple blue dress that she had made herself, and Owen wore his best shirt and a new hat he had bought specially for the occasion. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Owen kissed her soundly, earning cheers and applause from the assembled townspeople. The reception was held at the hotel, with the whole town contributing food and drink. There was music and dancing, and at one point, Clara Harrison and her mother Margaret arrived, having traveled from Carson City especially for the wedding. Clara, now taller and more grown up at 11 years old, hugged both Vivienne and Owen fiercely. "I knew you would end up together," she said with the confidence of a child who believes she understands the world. "That night in the storm, I could tell." "Could you now?" Owen said, smiling at her. "Of course. You looked at each other like my mama and Papa used to look at each other before Papa died." Margaret, overhearing this, smiled sadly. "Out of the mouths of babes," she murmured to Vivienne. "She is right, though." Even in the midst of all that chaos and fear, there was something between you two. As the evening wore on and the celebration continued, Vivienne found herself standing on the hotel's front porch, looking out at the quiet street. Owen came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Happy?" he asked, resting his chin on top of her head. "Happier than I ever thought possible," Vivienne replied, leaning back against him. "When I knocked on your door that night, I was running from one life and had no idea what I was running toward. I never imagined this." "This is your home now," Owen said, echoing the words he had spoken that first day but with a deeper meaning. "Always." They spent their wedding night at the ranch, and as Vivienne walked through the door of the house where she had first found shelter, she felt a profound sense of coming full circle. This was not just a house anymore. It was their home, the place where their life together would truly begin. The winter of 1878 was harsh, with heavy snows that kept them mostly confined to the ranch for weeks at a time. But Vivienne did not mind. She had closed the school for the winter months, as was customary, and being snowbound with Owen felt less like confinement and more like a gift of uninterrupted time together. They spent long evenings by the fire, talking and reading and simply enjoying each other's company. Owen taught Vivienne how to play chess, and she proved to be a quick learner, soon winning as many games as she lost. She taught him how to make her mother's recipe for apple cake, and they laughed together as he struggled with the unfamiliar task of baking. During the days, they worked together to care for the cattle and horses, making sure the animals had access to water and supplemental feed during the worst of the weather. Vivienne learned how to handle the stock, how to read the signs of illness or distress, how to work alongside Owen as a true partner in running the ranch. "You are a natural at this," Owen told her one afternoon as they finished feeding the horses. "I like the work," Vivienne said. "It is satisfying in a way that is different from teaching but no less fulfilling. I like seeing the direct results of what we do." "We make a good team," Owen said, pulling her close for a kiss. "We do," Vivienne agreed. By the time spring arrived, Vivienne knew she was pregnant. She had suspected for a few weeks, but had waited until she was certain before telling Owen. She chose a beautiful April evening, when the desert was blooming with wildflowers, and the air was soft and warm. They were sitting on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold when Vivienne said, "I have something to tell you." Owen turned to her, hearing something in her tone. "What is it?" "We are going to have a baby," Vivienne said, her hand moving to rest on her still flat stomach. "In late October, I think." For a moment, Owen just stared at her, processing the information. Then a huge smile broke across his face, and he let out a whoop of joy that startled the horses in the nearby corral. He swept Vivienne into his arms, being careful not to squeeze too hard. "A baby," he said, wonder in his voice. "We are going to have a baby. Are you happy?" Vivienne asked, though she could see the answer in his face. "Happy does not even begin to cover it," Owen said. "I am thrilled, terrified, amazed all at once. A baby, Vivienne, our baby." They held each other as the sun finished setting, talking about the future, about the child who would join them, about all the changes that were coming. Vivienne felt a deep contentment settle over her. This life, this man, this child growing inside her, it was more than she had ever dared to dream of. When she reopened the school in May, several of the mothers noticed the change in her almost immediately, even though she was not yet showing. There was something about the glow of early pregnancy that other women recognized. Mrs. Fletcher was delighted, immediately beginning to organize the town's women to help prepare for the baby's arrival. "You will need blankets and clothes, a cradle, so many things," she fussed, already making lists. "The whole community will want to help." Vivienne was touched by the outpouring of support. Women she barely knew stopped by the school to offer advice, hand-me-down baby clothes and knitted blankets. It reinforced what she had already come to know. Awahi was not just a place she worked. It was her home, and these people were her family. As summer progressed and her pregnancy became more visible, Vivienne continued teaching, though she tired more easily. Owen insisted on coming to town more frequently, worried about her overdoing it. She tried to assure him she was fine, but secretly she loved his protectiveness, the way he looked at her with such tenderness and awe. In August, they made the difficult decision that Vivienne would need to stop teaching when the baby came. The town council was understanding, agreeing to find a temporary replacement while Vivienne took time to care for their infant. "I will miss it," Vivienne admitted to Owen. "Teaching has become so important to me." "You can go back when you are ready," Owen assured her. "Maybe not full-time at first, but there is no reason you cannot continue to teach. We will figure it out together." The baby arrived on a cool October evening, 3 weeks earlier than expected. Owen had been in town picking up supplies when Vivienne's labor began, and by the time he raced back to the ranch, alerted by a young boy Mrs. Fletcher had sent to fetch him, the midwife was already there, and everything was progressing rapidly. Owen paced outside the bedroom door, listening to Vivienne's labored breathing and occasional cries of pain, feeling utterly helpless. When the midwife finally called him in, he found Vivienne propped up in bed, sweaty and exhausted but smiling, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in a soft blanket. "Meet your son," she said softly. Owen approached slowly, almost reverently, looking down at the small red face of his child. The baby was sleeping, one tiny fist pressed against his cheek, oblivious to the magnitude of his arrival. "A son," Owen whispered, reaching out to gently touch the baby's hand. Immediately, the tiny fingers curled around his much larger finger, and Owen felt his heart expand in a way he had not known was possible. "He is perfect." "He is," Vivienne agreed. "What should we name him?" They had discussed names, of course, but had been waiting to see the baby before making a final decision. Now, looking at his son, Owen said, "I was thinking Oliver, after my grandfather." "Oliver Bradley," Vivienne said, testing the name. "I like it. Oliver it is." The first months of Oliver's life were a blur of sleepless nights and constant adjustments. Vivienne threw herself into motherhood with the same determination she had brought to teaching, learning as she went, making mistakes and correcting them. Owen helped as much as he could, getting up for middle-of-the-night feedings, walking the floor with a fussy baby, changing diapers with growing competence. They were both exhausted but happier than they had ever been. Watching Vivienne nurse their son, seeing Oliver's eyes start to focus and track their movements. Witnessing his first smile, every small milestone felt like a miracle. By the time Oliver was 4 months old, Vivienne began to feel restless. She loved being a mother, but she missed teaching. She missed the interaction with her students, the satisfaction of seeing a child grasp a difficult concept, the feeling of making a difference in young lives. "What if I went back part-time?" she suggested to Owen one evening. "Maybe 3 days a week to start." "If that is what you want, then we will make it work," Owen said immediately. "I can adjust my schedule, take Oliver with me for some of the lighter ranch work." They worked out a system where Mrs. Fletcher would watch Oliver 2 days a week. Owen would care for him one day, and Vivienne would have the baby with her at home the other days. It was not perfect, but it allowed Vivienne to return to the classroom while still being present for her son's early years. The townspeople welcomed her back enthusiastically, and her students were thrilled to have her return, even on a reduced schedule. They crowded around to see baby Oliver when Vivienne brought him to the school for visits, and several of the older girls competed for the privilege of holding him. Life settled into a new rhythm, busy and full and rich with meaning. Owen's ranch continued to prosper, allowing them to make improvements to the house and gradually expand their herd. Vivienne's teaching brought in additional income and gave her a sense of purpose beyond her roles as wife and mother, though she treasured those roles as well. When Oliver was 2 years old, Vivienne became pregnant again. This time, she knew what to expect, and the pregnancy seemed easier, though that might have been simply because she was not dealing with the terror and exhaustion of her first time. Their daughter, Anna, was born in the spring of 1881, a placid baby who seemed content to observe the world with wide, curious eyes. Oliver, now a sturdy toddler with his father's dark hair and his mother's quick intelligence, was fascinated by his baby sister. He would sit beside her cradle for hours, telling her stories in his baby babble, bringing her his favorite toys to share. "He is going to be a good big brother," Owen observed, watching his son with their daughter. "He is," Vivienne agreed, nursing Anna while keeping one eye on Oliver. "I think he likes having someone smaller to look after." With 2 children, life became even more complex, but also more joyful. The house that had once seemed too big for one lone cowboy now rang with the sounds of family. Children's laughter, whispered bedtime stories, the clatter of toys and the patter of small feet. Vivienne eventually returned to teaching full-time when Anna started school herself at age 5. Having both children in the classroom with her was its own unique challenge and reward. Oliver, now 7, sometimes struggled with having his mother as his teacher, wanting her attention but also wanting to be treated like the other students. Anna, on the other hand, soaked up knowledge like a sponge, always eager to learn more. The years passed, marked by the rhythms of ranch life and the school year. Owen and Vivienne's love deepened with time, becoming the kind of partnership that needed few words because they understood each other so completely. They still had their evening talks, but now they often included Oliver and Anna, discussing the day's events, plans for the future, the small and large matters of their intertwined lives. When Oliver turned 12, he began to take on more responsibility at the ranch, working alongside his father and learning the skills he would need to eventually run the operation himself. He was a natural with the cattle and horses, patient and observant, with his father's steady temperament and his mother's intelligence. Anna, at 10, showed more interest in books and learning than in ranch work, though she was competent enough at the necessary tasks. Vivienne saw herself in her daughter, the hunger for knowledge, the way she would lose herself in a book for hours. You think she will want to be a teacher? Owen asked one evening, watching Anna pore over a book about the natural sciences. Maybe, Vivienne said. Or maybe she will want something entirely different. The world is changing, Owen. By the time she is grown, women will have opportunities that were not available to me. Whatever she wants to do, we will support her, Owen said. Both of them, they can be anything they want to be. In 1888, when Oliver was 13 and Anna was 11, Owen's younger brother James wrote from Texas, saying their father had died. The letter brought complicated emotions for Owen. He had not seen his father in over 15 years, had never fully reconciled the disappointment he knew his father felt at his choices. I should go back, Owen said, reading the letter for the third time. For the funeral to help settle his affairs. Then we will all go, Vivienne said firmly. The children should meet your family, see where you came from. The journey to Texas took 3 weeks by train, a grand adventure for Oliver and Anna, who had never been farther from Awahi than Carson City. They arrived in the small town where Owen had grown up to find his family gathered. His mother, older and frailer than Owen remembered. His brother James, now a rancher himself with a wife and 3 children. And his 2 sisters, both married with families of their own. The reunion was emotional and difficult. Owen's mother cried when she saw him, apologizing over and over for the years of separation. His siblings were welcoming but cautious, uncertain how to bridge the gap of so many years apart, but Vivienne and the children helped smooth things over. Anna's brightness and Oliver's steady nature won over their relatives, and gradually the family began to reconnect. They stayed for 2 weeks, attending the funeral, helping settle the estate and slowly rebuilding relationships that had been fractured for too long. On the train ride back to Nevada, Oliver asked, "Papa, why did you leave?" Owen thought carefully before answering. "Sometimes you have to leave the life you know to find the life you are meant to live. If I had stayed in Texas, I never would have met your mother. You and Anna would never have been born. Everything I have, everything I am, came from making that choice." "Do you regret it?" Anna asked. "Not for a single moment," Owen said, looking at Vivienne. "Though I wish I had handled it better with my father. That is something I regret that we never reconciled before he died." "We can write to grandmother," Vivienne suggested. "Stay in touch this time. It is not too late to be part of their lives again." They did write, regular letters that kept the family connected across the distance. Owen's mother came to visit them once, making the long journey to see the life her son had built. She spent a month with them, marveling at the ranch, the town, the life Owen and Vivienne had created together. "You were right to leave," she told Owen on her last night before heading back to Texas. "I see that now. This is where you belong with this woman and these children. Your father saw it too before he died. He just did not know how to say it." The words brought Owen a peace he had not known he needed, a final benediction on the choices he had made. As Oliver grew into young manhood, tall and strong at 17, and Anna blossomed into a thoughtful 16-year-old with her mother's love of learning, Owen and Vivienne found themselves entering a new phase of life. The children needed them less, were beginning to build their own paths. Oliver had started courting Elizabeth Morton, the daughter of a neighboring rancher, a sensible girl who was as comfortable on horseback as Anna was with a book. Owen and Vivienne liked her, approved of the way she challenged Oliver and made him laugh. Anna had announced her intention to attend the normal school in Carson City, to become a teacher, following in her mother's footsteps. Vivienne was proud but also aware that this meant their daughter would be leaving home, building a life separate from theirs. When did they grow up? Vivienne asked Owen one evening as they sat on the porch, a ritual they had maintained throughout their marriage. It seems like just yesterday we were bringing Oliver home for the first time. I know, Owen said, taking her hand, but we raised them well. They are good people, ready to make their own way. I am proud of them, Vivienne said, but I will miss them. We will have each other, Owen reminded her, just like we started. Oliver married Elizabeth in the summer of 1896, a joyous celebration that brought together two ranching families and half the town of Owyhee. The young couple built a small house on Owen's land, planning to eventually take over the ranch when Owen was ready to retire. Anna left for Carson City in the fall, tearful but determined. She wrote home regularly, full of stories about her classes and her new friends, about the ideas that were opening up for her. Vivienne read every letter multiple times, proud of her daughter's accomplishments but aching with the absence. With both children launched into their adult lives, Owen and Vivienne found themselves alone together for the first time in nearly 18 years. The house felt too quiet, too empty, and for a while they both struggled with the adjustment, but gradually they rediscovered the pleasures of having time for just each other. They took long rides across the ranch, something they had not been able to do regularly in years. They read together by the fire, discussing books and ideas late into the night. They made love with the freedom and abandon of newlyweds, no longer worrying about children hearing or interrupting. I forgot how much I enjoyed having you all to myself, Owen confessed one morning, Vivienne curled against his side. I was just thinking the same thing, Vivienne said. I love our children, and I would not trade motherhood for anything, but there is something wonderful about this too. Elizabeth gave birth to Owen and Vivienne's first grandchild in the spring of 1897, a boy they named Theodore. Oliver had never looked more terrified or more proud than when he brought his son to meet his parents, carefully placing the tiny baby in Vivienne's experienced arms. Now you know how I felt, Owen said to his son with a smile. That mixture of absolute terror and overwhelming love. I had no idea, Oliver admitted. How did you do it? How did you keep from being scared all the time? Who says we were not scared? Vivienne said, gently rocking Theodore. We were terrified, especially at first. But you figure it out as you go, and the love is so much bigger than the fear. Anna came home for the summer, delighted to meet her nephew and full of stories about her experiences in Carson City. She had done well in her studies and would be graduating the following spring, already with offers to teach in several different towns. Though none of them are Owyhee, she said wistfully, I miss home. There will always be a place for you here, Vivienne assured her. But you should go where the best opportunity is. You can always come home later. Anna ended up taking a position in Reno, a larger town with a bigger school. It was farther from home than Vivienne would have liked, but she understood her daughter's need to spread her wings, to see more of the world than the small mining town where she had grown up. The years continued their steady march forward. More grandchildren arrived. Elizabeth and Oliver had 3 more children, 2 daughters and another son. Anna eventually married a fellow teacher named David Wright, and they had 2 children of their own. The ranch prospered, and Owyhee grew from a rough mining camp into a more established community. Through it all, Owen and Vivienne remained each other's constant. They aged together, gray appearing in their hair, lines forming around their eyes and mouths, but the love between them never diminished. If anything, it grew stronger, tempered by years of shared experience, by the life they had built together. On a warm evening in June 1910, they sat together on the same porch where they had spent so many evenings over the past 32 years. They were both in their 60s now, Owen's hair mostly silver, Vivienne's pulled back in a neat bun that was more gray than brown. Their hands were clasped together, weathered and worn from years of work, but still fitting together perfectly. "You ever think about that night?" Vivienne asked. "When I knocked on your door, all the time," Owen admitted. "I think about how different my life would have been if I had not been home that night, or if I had turned you away." "You would never have turned me away," Vivienne said with certainty. "No," Owen agreed. "I would not have. But I am still grateful for the storm that brought you to me, for every moment since. I was so scared that night," Vivienne remembered. "I thought I was going to die out there in the rain, lost and alone, and then you opened the door and I knew I was going to be all right." "You have made my life richer than I ever imagined it could be," Owen said, turning to look at her. "Every day with you has been a gift, even the hard days," Vivienne teased gently. "Especially the hard days," Owen said seriously. "Because we faced them together and came through stronger on the other side." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set, painting the Nevada desert in shades of gold and orange. Around them, the ranch buzzed with life. Oliver working in the barn, Elizabeth calling the children in for supper, the cattle lowing in the distance. It was the sound of family, of home, of a life well lived. "This is your home now," Owen said softly, echoing the words he had spoken so many years ago, but with decades of meaning behind them now. "It always has been," Vivienne replied, leaning her head on his shoulder. "From that very first night, even though I did not know it yet. You were my home, Owen. You always have been." As twilight deepened into night and stars began to appear in the vast Nevada sky, Owen and Vivienne Bradley sat together on their porch, hands clasped, hearts intertwined, grateful for the storm that had brought them together and for every moment of the beautiful life they had created from that chance meeting. Their love story had begun with a knock on a door in a storm, and it would continue for all the years they had left, a testament to the power of kindness, courage, and opening your heart to the unexpected gifts life brings. The ranch would eventually pass to Oliver and his children, continuing the legacy Owen and Vivienne had built. Anna's children would inherit her love of learning, some becoming teachers themselves, others finding their own paths. The story of the schoolteacher who knocked on a cowboy's door during a storm would become family legend, told and retold to grandchildren and great-grandchildren. A reminder that sometimes the most important moments in our lives come from the least expected places. But for Owen and Vivienne, sitting together in the gathering darkness, surrounded by the life they had built and the family they had created, the story was not just legend. It was their truth, their joy, their everything. And as they rose together and walked inside, ready to face whatever years remained to them with the same partnership and love that had carried them through 3 decades, they knew that their story had the only ending that mattered. They had found each other, built a life together, and would face whatever came next side by side, exactly as they had always done. The desert wind whispered through the sagebrush, carrying with it the promise of tomorrow and all the tomorrows after that. And in the little ranch house outside Owyhee, Nevada, 2 hearts beat as one, united by a storm and sustained by a love that had weathered every season, every challenge, every joy and sorrow life had brought their way. It was not a perfect life, but it was theirs, and that made it more precious than anything else in the world.